Welcome back to the MizzouToday Show, powered by On3 and Rivals. We've got an Arkansas preview for this week's Thanksgiving episode, recording here on Wednesday, November 26th. And after that, we're going to get into some Mizzou men's basketball talk. Kyle got to break some news this week and ended up being a pretty good performance there for Trent Burns in his college basketball debut. And we'll talk about the impact of losing Jayden Stone for 3 to 4 weeks as well. But Kyle, we'll get right into it. Host Kenny Van Doren, of course, always joined by Kyle McAreavy. Kyle, we're going to talk about this Arkansas game real quick, but I thought it would be fun to go and look back at our game-by-game predictions and also just the awards that we had at the beginning of the year. This was something that you kind of started, and I just followed your lead on where you thought the Mizzou Tigers would end up by the end of the year and who would be like the top contributors. Overall, do you remember what record you gave the Missouri Tigers?
I think I picked 9-3, and I expect I picked loss to Alabama, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma. So I think the one game I really got wrong there was Vanderbilt.
Yeah, so you did have 9-3, but you are incorrect on the teams you had losses to. You had the first loss, of course, to Alabama, losing back-to-back week 7 and week 8 to Auburn, 35-27, beating Vanderbilt, and then losing to Oklahoma, but also beating Texas A&M, 27-24.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I remember my reasoning for Auburn being I thought they would struggle in the first road game. That makes sense. Okay.
You did mention the simulated road game against Lindenwood in fall camp. Looking at my own predictions, I also had the Tigers at 9-3. I had losses to Oklahoma, a little bit more high scoring than I thought. I thought both offenses would be a lot better than they were. I did have a loss to Alabama. And I had a loss to South Carolina, even though there were some people coming into the year that thought that South Carolina team might be a little bit overhyped and didn't really address what it lost. So we were both wrong. The ceiling right now for the regular season is 8-4, but we can also, project injuries or how much that team would have been impacted by losing some offensive contributors. Looking at MVP, though, do you remember who you tabbed as your offensive MVP?
Really hope I picked Ahmad Hardy.
Number 1, Ahmad Hardy.
Hey.
Yep. Number 2, Kevin Coleman, and number 3, Caden Green, as you did talk about moving him out to left tackle, improving that offensive line. Probably hasn't been the year that he maybe expected. Kevin Coleman a little bit up and down, had over 100 yards against Oklahoma in Week 13 this past Saturday. But you were spot on with Ahmad Hardy being up there. Now he's in the finalist for the Doak Walker Award, along with Kwan Lacey and Jeremiah Love. Offensively for me, I chose Kevin Coleman Jr. I thought it'd be a nice safety blanket for Beau Pribula. I think at times you saw that. He hauled in a career-high 932 yards at Mississippi State last season. And I even said Beau Pribula or Sam Horn, because when we wrote those stories, we weren't even sure, even though a lot of us were leaning to Beau Pribula being that starting quarterback you didn't know. I think I was a little bit more laid back or, kind of pushing back on Ahmad Hardy. I knew he was a great running back. I said, will there possibly be any, growing pains or just, differences from jumping up from the Sun Belt to the SEC? And there weren't. There's some times where he didn't have the best offensive performances, but he is the leading rusher in the SEC right now for a reason. And I think that was the right pick on your part. And I also think I was just trying to be a little bit different from you, Kyle. I had Caden
Green. Match on everything.
Yeah, we can. But I had Caden Green third. Defensive MVP. Do you think you remember who you chose for that?
I bet I picked Dalen Carnell, and I think I remember having Jalen Catalon in my top 3.
You had Dalen Carnell number 1, Jalen Catalon number 2, and Khalil Jacobs number 3. You even mentioned I'm going to go out on a limb with Khalil Jacobs. And interesting enough,
he's been good, but not defensive MVP good.
And not probably the best linebacker as well. You didn't even mention.
Not mentioning Josiah Trotter or Damon Wilson is a big Ole Miss on my part.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to know what to expect from transfers too, even though you were spot on about the offensive transfer. My defensive MVP, I went Dalen Carnell, yes. Jalen Catalon too. There was just so much excitement too around Jalen Catalon and ended up not having the year maybe he was expecting. I had Damon Wilson 3 though. I talked about, trying to find a replacement for Johnny Walker. You kind of have to do it in the aggregate and, finding different ways to pick up what you lost sack-wise and disruption. And I was even talking about this on another podcast when Curtis Looper received the nomination for the Broyles Award from Missouri. I think second right behind him would have been Brian Early. And I think after that, it's a little bit tighter on, who you go with. But that was 1A, 1B for me.
Yeah, I think if we were to pick right now, it'd be between Trotter and Wilson for me. I was feeling coming out of last week that I had been a little disappointed by Dalen Carnell's performance this year, but then I saw some stats about his coverage, and it's been a lot better than I think gets noticed in the way that good coverage sometimes does when it's not leading to, turnovers or something like that. So I think I did better on the offensive end than the defensive end. I would say probably Trotter and Wilson.
Yeah, I'm just kind of glad
right now.
I'm just kind of glad I had Damon Wilson in there at all. I'm surprised we didn't have Zion Young listed in there, but I think Zion Young has definitely stepped up a lot more than maybe some were expecting. Most improved. This is a tough one because, man, do you want to guess who your top choice was, Kyle?
I think it was Marquise Gracial.
It was Marquise Johnson. Yeah, Marquise Gracial 2 and Josh Manning 3.
Okay. Well, yeah, Marquise Johnson's a miss. Marquise Gracial's been good. I mean, that's, statistically defensive tackles are never super easy to judge just looking at a box score, but he's been very good and an impactful defensive tackle. So I'll take that one as a win. Marquise Johnson, pretty big miss there. I mean, just kind of a disappointing season for him.
You lose your starting job to Donovan Olubade as well down the stretch. And I even looked up this on another podcast as well. When was the last time Marquise Johnson recorded a reception for Missouri this season?
I will say I listened to you. It's incorrect on the box scores from the
games.
I believe his last one in a box score was Texas A&M. Is that right?
In the box score, it was Vanderbilt.
They're just in the box score it was Vanderbilt, and then they came back and played Texas A&M. That's why I got confused, because against Texas A&M, he had a catch that got credited to Donovan Olubade. I went back and watched it because I was really confused doing my report cards for that game when I saw that Olubade had, I think, 3 catches credited in that game and Johnson had none. And I went back and I found the catch. Marquise Johnson had a catch against Texas A&M for 12 yards.
Yeah, I guess, man, I don't even remember that, but it's weird. Usually, like, a lot of these stat recording, especially at the college level, are pretty good. And sometimes it might be off by a couple of yards, and that's usually on rushing yards, especially for quarterbacks with sacks counting against them. My 3 possibilities for most improved, and I think I would have hit this on the nail on the head if he had played the entire season. But Blake Craig, I had him coming into the year as my top guy that would be the most improved. He was 1 for 7 on kicks inside the 40-49. Looked good on his first couple kicks to start the year, and then tears his ACL against Central Arkansas in week 1. Number 2, Toriano Pride. I think that's a fair one. I think Toriano Pride has definitely had a bounce back year, especially in the second half. He's been a strong contributor for this Mizzou team. Marvin Burks, who was very up and down his sophomore year. I think there's still, an argument to be made that he has shown improvements, especially in the PFF grades. But I think of those 3, Toriano Pride is probably my best bet.
I agree. I think Toriano, especially like you mentioned, the second half of the season has looked a lot better. There were still some issues first half of the season kind of early on, but he seems to have really figured it out. I would say Burks has been certainly better than last year. It hasn't been necessarily up to the level that Mizzou fans were really excited about, just from his ranking and everything coming out of high school, but he's still developing and has gotten better since last year for sure.
Yeah, at least one more season.
Yeah, nothing you can do about Blake Craig.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I had so many numbers into my little blurb as well. I thought I was so spot on with Marvin Burks too. Of course, at least one more season too in that secondary, and it's crazy to think. I remember when he was kind of flipping back and forth with his interest between Ole Miss and Mizzou, and now he's going to be Missouri Tiger all the way through most likely. Kyle, let's get into a little bit of preview action for this Arkansas game, 2:30 p.m. Of course, this game is no longer the Black Friday game. It is now on Saturdays. It's going to be in Fayetteville this year. Season finale. Kyle's going to be there as well. 2:30 SEC Network, if I didn't mention that. Kyle, what did you pick up on Drinkwitz talking this week? I know he talked about Taylor Green a little bit, gave him a pretty hefty comp as well. Just, there is a lot of, familiarity there with Arkansas for Drinkwitz and the history of the Razorbacks. What did Drinkwitz have to say about the Razorbacks this week, and maybe some other coaches or players as well?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the main thing is Arkansas's offense is pretty explosive. They're around the top 20, I think, in basically most offensive categories. If not, the run game especially fantastic, and Green statistically, when it touchdowns, has been very, very good. This was more a conversation with Kyle Sutherland of Know Your Foe. Green not a major exited the game last week with an injury and then was okayed to return, and Arkansas just stuck with KJ Jackson. So Drinkwitz didn't really focus on talking about Green, but there's I think, moderate chance that KJ Jackson is at quarterback this weekend. Either way, the offense is really good. The issues for Arkansas are on the other side of the ball, where statistically the Razorbacks are like bottom 20 in total defense, points allowed, rushing yards allowed. I think they're bottom 30, and then passing yards allowed, they're bottom 20. It's been a major, major struggle for Arkansas on the defensive side of the ball, which seems similar. It's not exactly the same, but seems similar to me to the Mississippi State matchup just a couple of weeks ago, where you're going against a pretty good offense and a defense that has had a lot of issues. And I do think that kind of plays into Mizzou's favor.
I was looking at this team as well, this Razorbacks team, and under Petrino, Petrino, right? Bobby Petrino. Yeah, Bobby Petrino.
Coaching for one more game.
Yeah, I saw he did announce.
Officially announced today, or maybe not officially announced today, but reported today that Arkansas has found their new head coach, and it's not Bobby Petrino.
Yep, and I don't think we probably should talk about it maybe necessarily until we do get a little bit more confirmation on it. But yeah, I mean, his offense has done a good job of running the football. Mike Washington is top 3 in rushing yards in the SEC, 1,018. There's only 2 other rushers with over 1,000 this year. And of course, both of them Missouri products, Ahmad Hardy and Kawan Lacey, 1,400 and 1,100 respectively. I think that's good company to be in for Mike Washington this year. He played at Buffalo. He's from upstate New York. He played at New Mexico State, and now he's succeeding in the SEC. That's a pretty dang good career for Mike Washington. So I think that's the one thing you kind of look out for about this Arkansas offense. And you talk about the explosive plays too, and even if Taylor Green, if he is going to be the starting quarterback in this game, he also has 8 rushing touchdowns this year. The turnovers have been more of the issue with 11 interceptions. But that's just a little bit to know about that offense in the running attack. Sacks-wise, though, I know there's been a lot of worries and issues with this Arkansas defense. You fire your defensive coordinator, that kind of comes with it. But Quincy Rhodes is tied for 3rd in sacks this year in the SEC with Damon Wilson. Of course, Colin Simmons with 10 at number 2, and Cassius Howell, of course, leading the way with 11.5 for Texas A&M. Just with I feel like that was a huge conversation during that Texas A&M Mizzou week. From the rest of the interviews this week, Kyle, any other big standouts? I know Beau Pribula talked about responding and recovering from his injury, but outside of that, I mean, what else stood out this week in the interviews?
That was kind of it. There was a lot of talk with Beau about what the recovery process was like across a couple of weeks. He said something to the effect of when he was on the cart at Vanderbilt, he didn't think he'd be able to walk again for a while, let alone get back on the football field. So to be able to fully recover and play not incredibly against Oklahoma, but it didn't look like the injury was hampering him. That didn't look like the reason why Mizzou's offense was struggling. Is just an incredible timeline and recovery process. Otherwise, that's kind of it from the standouts from interviews. We talked to Damon Wilson and Santana Banner, and there just wasn't a whole ton of individual stuff about Arkansas. The interesting thing about Santana Banner was he did a backflip when Mizzou beat Auburn, and he got asked about that and said he's been doing parkour basically his whole life. So I want to talk to him about that. I think that could be a fun story down the line. But nothing really super important about this week's matchup.
Missouri even posted the backflip, like a GIF or like a really short video of it on their X account. The football team did after flipping Jayden McAreavy from Louisville. So that's how I saw it. I didn't even see it in the game. Last thing on this Arkansas game before we get into looking at your score predictions, Kyle, from the beginning of the year. This offensive run game, didn't really find many holes against Oklahoma as it wanted to. You only score 6 points against the Sooners. You're really expecting a bounce back here offensively with a lot of the just the metrics that are pointing to this Arkansas defense not being one of the best in the SEC or even in the country. What do you want to see just from Ahmad Hardy in his final regular season game, and especially just in the passing game too? Is there opportunities for Beau Pribula to really clean things up as in his second game back from injury?
Yeah, there's really room for it to look a lot better, right? Again, I bring up Mississippi State as a comp. The offense looked fine against Mississippi State, fine to pretty good, because Ahmad Hardy was able to, get a couple of yards before contact and then make people miss. Arkansas has struggled with missed tackles. If the Mizzou offensive line can get a good enough push running the ball, Hardy gets into the second level, makes somebody who's already struggling with missed tackles miss, and he's off to the races. Great. Then the offense looks fantastic. You're able to convert on enough third downs to get some rhythm. Pribula is able to find some extra throws, and it all looks way better than it has most of the time recently. I just wrote about this morning for a story that'll come out Friday, which is, the offense is going to look better this week, but does that mean any of the issues are resolved? Probably not. And at this point, does that really matter? Also, probably not. There's only, there's 2 games left. In one of those games, I expect the offense to look a lot better, and then it'll be bowl prep and whatever happens there. So we're to the point now where it's just like, can they figure out what the issues have been so that next season you don't suffer through the same thing? I don't know. It was interesting asking about it in the press conference, because it's kind of a mixture of feelings of like, there's a clear issue against good defenses. Mizzou has really struggled this entire back half of the season, but we're to the point of the year where the biggest goals of the season are out the door, and you're just kind of playing for pride. So like, does it really matter if you get the whole issue figured out versus if you just get this game figured out and you're able to make it look good these final 2 games?
Drinkwitz talked about wanting more creativity and maybe a lack of it these last couple of weeks. This game over the last couple of years hasn't always been close, and it was a little bit closer in the snow game in 2024. But maybe there's an opportunity there to get a little bit more creative for Kirby Moore and boost his stock. I mean, he's probably going to get a pretty close review this offseason, especially Eric Link as well in special teams, to see what needs to be fixed there for those guys to stick in their jobs. Kyle, looking back at your score prediction from August for this game, you had Arkansas losing this one 28-17. I had this game 35-14. Of course, a Mizzou win as well. I'm sticking with the 35-14. I don't really want to touch my predictions anymore, but do you want to change your 28-17 at all?
Yeah, I adjusted for Know Your Foe to, I think, 31-24 Mizzou. Kind of the same thing I've been saying. I expect the offense to look a lot better this week. I think Mizzou should be able to control the game on the ground pretty well. And in those games, the offense looks pretty good. So, yeah, I also think Arkansas's offense is good enough to put up some points. So 31-24.
Yeah, I think that's a good one too. I'm glad like Drinkwitz didn't pull out the semantics card too, maybe just as a joke, talking about the quarterback spot. And he's been pretty open about, he always gets asked, how is it, different facing a quarterback that can run and throw. That's pretty much been the MO of every team they've placed this year, that a quarterback can do both. So I'm going to stick with that one. Of course, 2:30 Saturday, Missouri's regular season finale before the postseason. Of course, already punched a ticket to a bowl game. Can improve their chances for a better goal with their 8th win of the season, but not going to reach that double-digit wins this time. But I think that's still a good one. A ceiling of 9 wins is still good after winning 11 and 10 the previous 2 seasons. Kyle, before we get into our little recap of Mizzou basketball of the past week, a quick read from our sponsors over at Roback. There's only one way to describe Roback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Roback, they're completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable active wear. Roback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. Unfortunately, I am in Houston right now, went home for the holidays, and I do not have any Roback on me, but of course, Kyle still representing Roback on the podcast. With novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of active wear. Roback's everyday shorts or their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They're both super comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for a day on the move. Roback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use the code MIZ20 on Roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with code MIZ20. Kyle, wrapping up the show here, a little bit, basketball talk. Missouri wins its 7th game of the season on Tuesday, 30-point win over South Carolina State. But I think the bigger, headlines from this game, and you even put it in your headline, is that Trent Burns finally made his college basketball debut, a little bit on a minutes restriction. But I thought he looked great. He had a couple turnovers in that game, but I think he can still zip the ball. I think that's still a positive in the way that he was passing and moving the ball around. I know some people called him Tremby, talking about Victor Wembanyama and giving him that nickname, with a 7'5" center on the court who can really move around and shoot the ball. Overall, what were your takeaways of seeing him? And then can you give us a little bit of an update on where Jayden Stone stands?
Yeah, so with Burns, it was fun to watch, after breaking the news that he would make his debut. I was kind of keeping an eye on him pregame, and when the team came out for the final warm-ups, layup lines right before announcing the lineups, he just sprinted onto the floor. He was so excited. You could see that he was pumped to be able to get on the floor for the first time. And I guess he technically played in Mizzou's exhibition last year against Lincoln. So, 13 months or whatever. And it was clear initially that it had been a little bit, right, which is to be expected. As he warmed up and got into the game and got more comfortable out there, I think he showed a lot of the potential and promise that Mizzou fans have been hoping to see from him, and we're really excited about from him. The way he can move for a guy who's listed at 7'5" is really impressive. He's quick. He's got, lateral quickness, down the court quickness. That was really, really impressive. And then there were a couple of plays where, there was one that stuck out to me in the moment, which was he jumped early for a rebound, and it took an extra hop that he wasn't expecting off the rim. And as he came down, he just hopped back up. And that second hop that you sometimes see isn't usually a good jump, right? You're not getting really high. And on his second hop, he was still just a foot above everybody else. It's like, oh yeah, that's the promise with this type of body and this type of athleticism, is even when you're out of position or you make a mistake, you can recover from it really easily. So he looked good. I think 7 points, 3 for 3 shooting, all close to the rim. Didn't quite see any of the longer range shooting that has been discussed as an ability he has. But overall, looked really good. And, the game was so for Mizzou that there was a long stretch of the second half where he, Honor Boateng, and Theo Barrett were all on the floor together. And so that was fun to ask about in the post-game presser, of just asking Gates, like, hey, you finally got all three of these guys out there together for the first time. And Gates talked in response about, their relationship and how they're going to be friends for life, and how great it was to just see that class kind of all out there together for the first time.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool too. Of course, you lose two of those guys to the transfer portal, but still keeping three of them is pretty neat. And three good ones that could really complement each other really well in the future too. They could all be starters one day for this Missouri team. Something that stood out to me from this game too, Kyle, is that all 11 players who touched the court made a field goal, but the efficiency was a little bit down. We talked about regression to the mean, 52, 28, and 77. 5 missed threes from Jacob Cruz, but he did reach the 1,000 mark in his career. So, I mean, that's a pretty cool accomplishment for him. He scored 7 points in this game. You get 12 points off the bench from Boateng, 11 from Theo Barrett. I still think at times there's a little bit to clean up for Theo as well. He had 4 personal fouls in this game. 17 points from Sean Phillips, almost perfect. 7 for 8 from the field, 3 for 5 from the line. 8 rebounds in this one. 5 on the offensive side too, which is a good sign. Sebastian Mack had 12 points, but also just another weird efficiency night for him. 3 for 10 from the field. He takes a lot of shots. He's the only guy who reached double-digit shots in this one from the field as well. But Mark Mitchell, 15 points as well. Last thing, just on this game, 98 to 66 win. What's the latest just on Jayden Stone with him being out 3 to 4 weeks? And then is there any expectation to see Trent Pierce in the next couple days?
Right. So Jayden Stone was the other part of the news breaking yesterday. He hurt his hand in practice, his left hand, on Monday, and will be out 3 to 4 weeks. So it's an injury where we actually got a timeline, which we did with Burns too initially, right? But we didn't with Boateng or Pierce early on. So because we've gotten a timeline, I kind of trust the timeline. Burns fell right in the middle of it, and that was projected out a couple of months. So I believe 4 weeks from the day of the injury is bragging rights. And there's nothing really the week before leading up to that. So I think 3 weeks would also be a return at bragging rights. So either way, that's about when to expect him. There's a moderate chance that, if he's not at 100% for that game, maybe you don't play him, you rest him an extra because you get it like a week off after that. Or a week and a half, really, because there's no like December 29th game this year. So maybe you just rest him for that game, get Christmas into New Year's off, and then have him return for SEC play. But definitely disappointing. He'd been really good and kind of a really exciting part of the Mizzou offense early on. So kind of losing that rhythm and taking him out of the offense for 3 to 4 weeks is disappointing for sure. Trent Pierce, I've heard whispers that he might be back as soon as Friday against Cleveland State. That's not confirmed. I haven't heard that with anyone from the team. That's just something that I've heard come up a couple of times and I think is possible. If he's able to do that, fantastic. It's been a really weird situation for him this whole time, because initially after he missed the first game or two, Gates was talking about him still practicing and just being kind of day to day. And then eventually, I think it was last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, Gates said during a press conference he had stopped practicing. So it had been trending further away from return. But it seems like he's kind of trending back toward getting on the court probably in the next game or two.
Those next 2 games, Friday, as Kyle mentioned, 1 o'clock on SEC Network Plus, and then next Tuesday, So we'll recap both of these next week, December 2nd, 8 p.m. on ESPNU against Notre Dame. Second Power 4 matchup, it's a high major matchup of the season in the ACC SEC Challenge. Kyle, just any final thoughts before we get out of here? I know that there's a Board of Curators meeting here on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. A lot of reports out there, especially from On3's Pete Nakos and Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger as well, about the future of Eli Drinkwitz's contract. But right now we don't have any specifics. But just any thoughts or anything you're hearing on that?
Yeah, it's got kind of the same thing. The expectation is this is an extension for Drinkwitz. The board has to generally okay deals before they happen. It's not like, it's the right way to phrase this. This is not them agreeing to a deal. So don't expect something tonight, probably. This is most likely the board agreeing to kind of a range of terms that they are okay with. There, as Ross Dellinger reported yesterday, there are multiple steps left to it getting done. But the expectation is this is kind of the board okaying an idea of the agreement and kind of setting a range of or setting parameters for what they're okay with Laird Veach agreeing to. I initially, when the news about the meeting came out, I thought maybe this was something that could move pretty quickly. I'm now, because there are multiple steps still involved, thinking maybe it's going to wait until after the game Saturday, especially with kind of how the rest of the coaching carousel goes. My expectation at this point is Lane Kiffin's going to LSU, but who knows? Because Lane Kiffin could do anything. And if he goes somewhere else, then, LSU and Drinkwitz have been connected through a lot of different conversations throughout the carousel. So, maybe that leaves something available, but we'll see. This is a good step toward an extension for Drinkwitz, and I do still think that's the most likely outcome. I've said that, I think, pretty much since the start, that I think the most likely outcome is Drink signs an extension is in Columbia.
I think that's a good sign and a sign of relief too, for a lot of those that are involved in this, and recruits to staffers that are still on staff with Drinkwitz, or players that committed to him, or are here for the long run. I think that's also a good sign for them. Kyle, any final thoughts before you head down to Fayetteville?
Football, basketball, as a matchup, because Gates' former team and it's his former primary assistant Rob Summers now the head coach there. So there's it shouldn't be all that interesting of a game, but there are interesting storylines to be had there. Otherwise, just looking forward to experiencing another new SEC stadium for me and another road trip to go watch some football.
You can follow all of Kyle's work, MizzouToday.com, with On3 and Rivals, Kyle_MCAREAVY on X. Follow his updates there and any news that he breaks as well, just on the basketball side, football side, and if a Drinkwitz extension does come through in the next couple of days or weeks, he will be all over it. We will see you guys next week, and enjoy your
and happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving, and be on the lookout for some deals at Mizzou Today. If you're not a member, we'd love for you to join and come hang out with us on the message board as well. Always enjoy the input from fans, especially ones that have been around for a long time, and your stories as well do mean a lot to those on the board. So if you're interested in joining, there are some deals coming up on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Just be on the lookout for that on the social media accounts for Mizzou Today at On3, and you can get some special deals with it as well, with the membership to the Athletic. So keep an eye out for that, and have a happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you guys next week.